I call to order the cost share agreement in emerging business. The members present, Mr. Larverdane, Mr. House, Mr. Fowler, January 13, 2009, or quarter to 5. The first thing on the agenda, to hear a report from administration concerning the status of the 8 feet program. Now, before the mayor comes up, I'm going to say something real quick. We put the 8, this is a program that I'm very concerned about. I put this on the docket or agenda, according to Mr. Goins, in December. It was pulled, we put it back on for January 13th. This is a program that involves minority businesses. This is important. I have minority business owners who want to participate, Reverend Green, Ms. Holt, other contractors. And this is a program that's inclusive. Our mayor talks about being diverse, being inclusive. We want to make sure that he's doing what he can to include folks. And that's why it's important. Just because you look at the council, you look at us, we want to make sure that minorities participate in every phase of city government. That's why we speak up about it, we talk about it, it's important. These programs are important. Mr. Mayor, you have the floor.
Thank you. For those of you who aren't aware, AFEET and several related programs were created by ordinance some time back. It was within the last 2 years that an old set of ordinances were revamped, and we looked at some new strategies that were put into the actual legislation that could help us achieve some goals. You face several other obstacles in doing that, and unfortunately for us, other council members, Mr. Lawson chaired the meeting. We had several meetings actually in the big, in the convention hall, because we expected a big turnout. We actually had one. We had an interactive day where folks came here and we discussed some of those issues. When I ran for office, we had a debate right here in this, and this issue came up. Subsequently, I met with members of the Central Louisiana Business League and others about what became the AFEET program. There are different versions of small and emerging business programs. There are versions that focus on disadvantaged business enterprises. There are different definitions that go into it. There were a string of cases, and a lot of this was reported on several years ago, that really affected, they were watershed events in the law. One of those cases...
Mayor, because of time constraints, I want you to kind of move along quickly.
Well, Mr. Larverdane, if you want me to present it, I tried to point out to you that there's a lot to present, that
Okay.
you got to let us present it.
Okay.
We have to let folks know what this is about.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
There was a watershed case in 1995 called Adoran versus Pena. Adoran changed a significant line of cases for many years about how to do these types of programs. One of the findings in that case, or one of the suggestions, was that to make certain findings and move forward on, if you want to look at a quota system and those things that used to exist, this case basically scrapped that for purposes of contracting and all of those things. It didn't say you couldn't do them. It said it would follow what was called strict scrutiny, which is a pretty tough thing to get by, but you needed a disparity study. So one of the items that we have to complete is that. When I came into office, and Reverend Green, you'll recall this, I believe that the previous administration ran some numbers just before. I've been in office 2 years, and I think that the minority and women-owned business totals were around 3.9%. I think that sounds right.
A lot lower, but it was...
Do you have the documents?
I recall that it was, well, I don't have what it was then. Okay. I don't know what the administration did then.
It was 3.9?
It was reported to be 4%. By the folks I met with and in talking to Reverend Green.
What is it now?
The numbers that we're showing now are significantly higher, but I don't believe that the numbers are totally correct. And the reason why I don't believe they're correct is because I think that you have to send out and get the information from each of the people that would qualify. So, for example, you would need to do baseline studies, and they're very simple. You'd send a card to all of the people who participate and are vendors on our vending list. You would ask them if they are a minority-owned business, and you give them the definition. There's an accepted definition, and you allow them to check that yes or no. You would ask the same thing for women-owned or small business, and all these are subject to definitions that are set forth in law or by regulation. It doesn't mean you're held to them. It means there are benchmarks for this. The last question you would want to ask in creating this is, are you willing to participate in a program? One of the things we worked on, Ms. Jennings and I talked about this, was an affidavit program. They have an affidavit program in Shreveport. Obviously, some people would not want necessarily to give all the information out about their business. Most would, I think, if they see a benefit. But you would have to disclose things, we think now, in categories of income to verify whether they qualify in each of these. As of today, in the last run we've done, and we've done 3 runs about where we are, and we've assigned staff to go through and identify what they are. We don't have for every business that does business with the city whether they consider themselves one of those items. So we're having to literally go back and ask each of them if they are. By our last count, the one I have in front of me today,
Can I see a copy of that?
I have 1 copy.
Okay. Can you get
It was
somebody to
handed
make
to
a
me.
copy for me?
I can,
I'd love to
Mr.
see
Lauderdale.
it.
By our last count, we have $18,756,000 in business that was done vending. We'll have to get, that was May 1st, 07 through April 30th, 08.
Okay. 18.1 million?
18.75 million.
Okay, and that's minority business?
No, that's total vending business.
Total vending, okay.
Okay.
Give me minority business involved in 18.
Mr. Lauderdale, I'm trying to answer you,
Okay.
sir.
That's
If
all
you could
I
let
know.
me answer, I will.
That's what I really want to know. That's what I
Of that number, minority business, and this includes women-owned. We grouped them together because you can qualify for both, but
let's do it just African American. Let's see how we go with that.
of minority-owned business, again, with women-owned included in that, it's 1.5 million. Okay?
1.5 million? Can you tell me that 1.5? Who's including that? Can you tell me that?
Yes.
Please do.
And then of the small businesses, and these are the numbers that we've been given, when you add those in, you have another 2 million, and then separately, women-owned, which are not.
Continue, Mr. Roy.
Ms. Lauderdale, I think I know what the problem is, that someone would say, how can you include in African-American-owned, women-owned, if it could be, for example, a non-African-American women-owned business, which I'm getting to right now. And that is that the ones that include women and minorities are if a person is both African-American and a woman. That's the number I just gave you.
Okay. You said the 1.5. Who received that 1.5? What companies or what persons
Do
received
you
that?
want me to go through the list?
Yes.
Let me finish the breakdown, then I'll run through the whole list. Then under women-owned who are not African-American, that number, much smaller, 500,000. So what you come out with at the end of it is minority-owned business, which includes, it's an all African-American number. So it would
That's what I wanna
include
know.
women who are African-American. You come out with 8.26% of the total. In small business, 11.15%.
So hold on, the 8 point, that'd be less than 1%? Is that what you're saying?
No,
8.26.
8.26%.
Okay.
So we started out 2 years ago at about 3.9. It's a significant jump. And when you look at these numbers, the tendency of anybody, and I understand it, is to look at the total demographic of the city and say, we have a city that's 54% African American. So the numbers should somewhat reflect that. But when you deal with the services that are provided here, in some cases professional services, either lawyers, engineers, and so forth, those numbers aren't the same because you have to look at qualified, ready, willing, and able companies that can do business. So even though you're looking at small numbers, and I don't want to make apologies about that, I think we always have to strive and continue to do better. You've seen a significant jump. That's a jump that has occurred just by making sure that you're identifying things better and being open. There's a much better way to do this process. I also want to caution anyone listening to the number that is subject to an actual card coming back and saying, I qualify and here's why. I believe the number could be lower than that. I know people don't want to hear that. I just do. That's my gut feeling.
Lower than 8.2.
I think it could be,
agree
yes.
We know it is.
I think it could be, yes.
Tell me, what are you going to do to increase the numbers?
One of the items, well, in the first quarter of '09, that would be right now, complete descriptions and categorical breakdowns of the whole vending portfolio by minority status, gender, and size, and that covers those three areas. Immediate institution of coding on all contracts for services. So there are uniform ways to code it. There are at least two, if not more. But you would code for tracking purposes, so you never have to compile it the manual way again. Every contract that comes through is coded from the beginning. And by contracts, again, remember, we're talking about professional service agreements, we're talking about engineering contracts. All of these are subject, ladies and gentlemen, to different forms of nomination. The A&E Selection Committee selects a lot of the engineering groups. Our consultant policy has been so stringent, it's fairly stringent, but all of those things have to be the subject of some type of objective format. We also need accurate and accessible records of vendors. So they have to provide you with accurate records. They have to agree to make those records accessible, and the information in them that they might otherwise not want to do. We also have implementation and funding of AFII, which is our financial intermediary program that will be part of this and work in conjunction. And I think that we need to finish the formulation of and issue an RFP on the disparity study.
Okay.
I believe that you have to do that study.
So the city has not done a disparity study, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, go ahead.
Let me ask a question.
Go ahead, Mr.
Mayor,
Ward.
Can I finish? I'm going to finish each quarter. Second
Can I ask
quarter
a
of
question,
09.
Mr. Roy?
Yes.
May I ask a question?
Go ahead, you got the floor. Go ahead.
Mayor, correct me if I'm wrong. Minorities make up well over 50% of this city, correct?
I stated the same, 54 or a little higher.
But only participate in 8.26% of the contractual work with the city.
That's what we're looking at now. I don't think that's an accurate number either way. I just think that until you actually have people certified that they fall in one of those categories, you can't say that percentage.
Is that the number you just gave?
That's the number I just gave based on members of the staff going through and looking at each and saying, this is a minority company, here's how I know why.
You feel that the scales are balanced?
No, I've never stated that. Our actual aspirational goals that Ms. Jennings and I worked on were between 10 and 15% as an aspirational goal. That's not ever going to sound like the number 50%, but the law doesn't allow you to set aside a quota of 50%, nor does that speak to, and this is important, whether a company is ready, willing, and able to do it. If you don't have, for example, certain minorities represented in certain classes of professional services or other groups at the same level, you have to look at that in determining the percentage. And that's just the reality of it. So a 10%, to give you an example, the state looks at a 10% goal in the legislation that it's passed over the years, some of which we model our legislation after. Now, if you look at the breakdown of the state population, African Americans represent more than 10% of the state population, but that was their goal. Our goal was to achieve 15%.
Are we close to that at all?
Well,
Are we close to that at all?
we're at 8 now, but in 2 years we've jumped up very significantly, and those things have to keep moving up, and you have to have the right program in place. And let me again state that this 8 number, I believe, can only be given and certified as a percentage to you, which is why I told Mr. Lauderdale that you need the time to do that if you've got these folks filling out a card and saying it. Second quarter 09, I think that you have to surpass a goal of 8%. You want to move us into, in a 2-year period, getting into that 10% area. And then I think that we have a Phase 1 and a Phase 2 of professional service goals. We have elected as a staff, we had a retreat and spent a whole day just on this issue of how we could help as a staff to implement these items. We have decided that the first one to pick are legal services. It's the toughest one in some ways, but it's the one that we think you can do the most to affect change because we see how these disparities come about.
Okay.
Mr. Goins, for example.
Mayor Roy, I'm going to ask you to wrap it up because we're running out of time real quick.
Okay.
And what, I just want to interject one thing. When we get the numbers, and I know you were asked for this report, I'd like to have accurate numbers. I don't believe that 8.2 is accurate at all. I just don't, and it kind of troubles me. How long has the AFEED program been in effect?
A year and a half.
We ought to have more accurate numbers. And I don't know who to blame or what's to blame, but if we're going to fund a program like this, we got to get some accurate numbers.
Well,
And this 8.2, I don't think is accurate. But I'm interested in seeing the support documents to justify it.
Yeah,
Mr. Lawson, that was the point I've requested from Mr. Laverdain. I've called him several times that you need to introduce this information accurately and correctly.
Right.
So when we were asked to give a report, no matter what, we are given a report. I believe that there is a reason why this information in a year and a half isn't readily available. And that's a personnel matter. It's not something that should be discussed at this meeting. So I took the time to make sure, and in 2 weeks was able to do most of and set up what we had already been working on. I might add I took particular pride in the program and was part of crafting and writing the legislation that this council passed. In the third quarter, first quarter you had Phase 1 and 2. Phase 1 you could address professional service agreements. Phase 2 I think you address a different set. In the fourth quarter, I think you can achieve all the goals that we've set, and you can then publish your 2010 goals. I have a ton more information each of these, but I'm being asked to hurry up. In the future, if we're asked to present this, we need to have sufficient time to break all of the different parts of this down, because there are many, many parts of it that we're not going to get to do to back up the information that we're giving you here today.
we're going to call you back February 10th, sir. Any comments from the public?
Yes.
Ms. Jennings, please state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Vaughn Jennings. I reside at 3235 4th Street, Alexandria, Louisiana.
Go ahead, ma'am.
As Mayor Roy mentioned, I'm a mayoral assistant assigned to small business development, specifically the Minority and Women-Owned Business Program known as AFEED. The ordinance has been in place for since November 6th of 2007, as a matter of fact. Over the past year, I've attempted to compile data from the administration on minority business participation, women business participation, and overall small business participation in general. And I want to say, let me first begin by saying that today I want to speak to you and utilize my right as an employee of the City of Alexandria to speak to the governing body of the City of Alexandria. On December 23rd, I was put on administrative leave and told verbally by the Chief of Staff and the City Attorney that I'd had external conversations. I was not given the detail of whom and specifically what I said that was improper. I did admit at that time that I have spoken to various members of this body, of the City Council, and answered questions and expressed my discontentment with my position and the way that I've been treated and the way that the program has been treated. I also expressed at this time that on numerous occasions I've contacted the mayor, the chief of staff, and other members of the administration to express concerns, and that those concerns have been blatantly ignored until recently. I've documented the number of times that I've expressed concerns, and it averages to approximately once a week since May. Earlier this year, I was removed from staff meeting along with some others and given various reasons why we were removed. However, the result is that the AFEED program was not represented in any staff meeting by someone actually involved with the program. I was not allowed to attend staff meeting. I was told that there was a development meeting, but I was never given an answer as to who's on the development team, why I was not placed on the development team, and when the development team meets. What I was able to get from the administration, let me say this, at the beginning of doing this program, I received data on minority business participation and business participation in general. I shared this information with the mayor, and it showed that minority business participation as well as women business participation was less than 1%.
How much, ma'am?
Less than 1%.
Where did the mayor get that perhaps 8.2?
I'm not certain of where. I can't speak to his numbers. I can say that the numbers he mentioned from May 07 to April 08, I have those numbers as well. They were given to me by the Chief of Staff, Kay McGills, and she informed me that the numbers that I have were pulled by Mr. Crutchfield and given to the mayor, and she shared those numbers with me. When I requested a report on these numbers this summer, I was given a false report, and the report was pretty easily identified as false because the amount of the budget would have had to change drastically from one year to the next for the amounts to be right. Let me get to the point. For May 07 to April 08, when you look at for-profit businesses, which is what the AFEED business ordinance is about. It is not about nonprofits. It's not about charitable contributions. It's not about those type of services. It's strictly about for-profit business. It also does not deal with contractual employees. We have some employees at the City of Alexandria that do not have they're not considered professional private service providers, but they're considered contract employees. Minority business participation for May 07, April 08 was approximately 1%. If it does anything, the mayor mentioned certifying the businesses in this report, and he is correct that businesses do need to be certified in that manner, but in the same manner that his numbers were compiled, I compiled these numbers off of the same data, and the amount is 1%.
Okay, let me stop you, Ms. James. With your recommendation, what can we do to increase the minority involvement in businesses?
One of the problems that became blatantly obvious to me is a lack of support from the administration in regards to implementing the AFEED program. I've received very little to minimum support, and I've even identified a pattern of behavior of retaliating against me whenever I express concerns about the AFEED program and about other matters.
Did you have a budget?
I've never had a budget. However, the mayor did ask me to prepare a budget. That budget was prepared and presented to Ms. McGills during budgetary hearings. It included the AFEED program as well as workforce initiatives, and it was my understanding from members of the council that they were not presented with that budget during the budget hearing. So the AFEED program nor our workforce initiatives have never had any type of funding. And let me add that,
Quickly, please, quickly.
I'll add quickly that you understand where a policymaker places his priorities by where they place their funding. And it's been the only things in the AFEED program that I've been able to implement are things that I could do that I did not need a tremendous amount of support from the administration in doing, or that I did not need money. And those things consist of outreach. We have been able to increase our outreach. We've increased the amount of information that's publicized on our website, and we begin to meet more with community individuals that were interested about the AFEED program. However, we have not been able to in-service the division heads or any of the supervisors or department heads on the AFEED program, and I did not do that alone because this type of program is not like just establishing a new policy for garbage pickup or something of that magnitude. It requires a policy change as well as a cultural change in the organization, and that has to come from the Chief Administrative Officer of the city.
30 seconds.
Women business participation for May 07-08 is 1%.
Okay.
And the final chart looks like this. 98% for non-minority business, 1% for minority business participation, and 1% for women business participation. There are very specific definitions that were included in the AFEED ordinance for minority business, for women business. They are calculated separately. When I calculate women business participation, it does include minority women as well as non-minority women. When minority business participation is calculated, it does include minority males as well as minority females.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Jennings, thank you.
Oh, and let me say, excuse me, Mr.
Another quick question from Mr. Goins.
So you're telling this body that since May of '07 that the AFEED program, minority-owned and women-owned businesses, this program has been ignored? Is that what you're...
Gradually, but not so subtly, my communication regarding this program ceased to exist. I sent emails to the mayor, to the chief of staff. Some were read, some were not read. They were blatantly ignored, and I've had a discussion with Ms. McGills about that the week prior to me being put on administrative leave. As I mentioned, there's been a pattern of retaliation against me each time that I express concerns about the program, and it usually comes in the form of allegations that are unrelated to the concerns that I express. When I attempt to address those allegations and present evidence to the contrary, I'm not able to schedule a meeting, I'm ignored, and I'm not able to address the allegations or my original concerns about the AFEED program. And I say to you that expressing these concerns to this governing body as individual members or as a body did not show disloyalty. I was also accused of being disloyal to the mayor and to my position, and I want the governing body as well as the residents of Alexandria to know I was not being disloyal to the mayor or to anyone by expressing concerns about this program. I feel that it's my obligation as an employee of the city of Alexandria and a resident to tell the truth, and I will continue to tell the truth in regardless of the actions that are taken against me.
Okay, thank you, Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else want to make a comment? Quickly, and then Ms. Yeah. Mayor, less than a minute, because we're going to wrap it up real quick. And after you, Ms. Hope will speak after you.
Retaliation by me or anyone in my administration against Ms. Jennings. Indeed, the members of my administration who make up our employment group have for some time recommended to me that Ms. Jennings' employment end with the city. I have defended Ms. Jennings at all turns. I've defended her intellect and her ability on these issues. Ms. Jennings chose to make these things public tonight. She is on administrative leave right now. It has nothing to do with any recommendations from her about whether the program was going or not. The fact of the matter is Ms. Jennings did not come to work, did not work on the program. There's a history of that beyond the employment here.
Can we talk about, wait a minute, are we
Yes,
talking
talk
about a
about
personnel
AFEED.
issue?
We are,
meeting?
but this council just allowed a person who works for the administration who's on leave to speak to these issues.
But
It's
you're
only
talking
fair.
specifically about a personnel issue. I would caution you
That's right.
about getting into a personnel issue.
Well, Mr.
Which is
Lawson,
better.
we have to be able to respond. These
I'm going to give you
allegations,
20 minutes, Mayor, because we're trying to wrap it up
these
quickly.
allegations are being
Try to
made.
make it up quick.
We were prepared tonight to go through all of the things that the chief executive officer of the city, as Ms. Jennings rightly pointed out, is prepared to do to make a sea change occur within how we look at this. If I ask all the members of my administration to stand up, who are division heads in this room, please stand up.
Mayor, you have
Please,
10
Denise,
seconds.
That's fine.
You got 10 seconds because we want to wrap it up real quick.
I'd
Ms.
like
Hope,
for the
At least
folks-
give the mayor the length of time you gave her.
No, I will give the mayor enough time, but understand we have another meeting.
These-
I have
this
I don't
is-
care about the other
this is
meeting.
the
We
administration-
brought this other stuff up.
I'm the
Should've
chair.
been brought up.
Listen, respect the chair.
I respect the chair, and I'm just
And I
finishing
want
up
my
now.
colleague to respect the chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Now, when I'm controlling the meeting, I don't interrupt you in your meeting. I don't expect you to interrupt this meeting. Respect the chair. Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Ms. Jennings is also correct that these numbers do involve other contracting persons that or entities that she just stated she didn't think should be included. I said at the outset that I thought the number was wrong. This is my administration. These are the people that I've put into place. I'd ask all of them, you can talk to them anytime. It was stated that we don't discuss AFEET and these items when we're in meetings. I'd ask for anyone in this administration to talk to you anytime about how much I spend time on these issues in every meeting, what types of meetings I have with these employees, and how often we discuss race. Before the issue came up that was noted in the newspaper about where we are as a society and where we're going, we were discussing those same findings. We were discussing how we need to interact as a community. We have in place right now a program that, bar none, Ms. Jennings told me this. She attended a meeting and a lawyer stood up and said he's never seen one on paper look better. But being on paper and implementing it are two different things. We're in the implementation phase. I want to say for the record that I disagree strongly with everything Ms. Jennings stated about how she's been treated. I personally have defended Vaughn on every occasion to my staff when it was cited that there were issues. And that's an important thing to note. We will provide information and continue to. Regardless of this meeting and what this is about, I can assure you in the public, African American, Caucasian, woman, or male, that you will not only get the accurate information about this, you'll see in 1 quarter what a good program can do and what a difference it can make to allow people to come to the table.
Thank you. Mr. Roy, Mr. Goins, you have a question?
Just one question for the mayor.
Yes.
Mayor, you disagree with Ms. Jennings in regards to how she was treated. Do you disagree with that 1% number?
I don't think it's, well, I would say this. If you looked at 3.9, I know we're doing more than was done before. If the assumptions that made 3.9% before I came into office are wrong, because we're including things that people would argue shouldn't be included. If you include Kappa Alpha Psi doing a basketball program that is organized as a not-for-profit, that it shouldn't be included, I would tend to think that that's right. Okay. If you look at a group that pays salaries and has a larger mission that is organized as not-for-profit but is doing a service and there are salaried folks involved significantly, then I think you get into a different area. I think that the number is lower than 8.8%. I think it's lower than that.
Mayor, let me go.
I said that at the outset.
Mr. Mayor, let me go and stop you. Ms. Holt, say something less than 10 seconds.
We're going to bring close. We need to start the regular meeting.
Yeah,
okay?
let's stop. Let her, 10 seconds, Ms. Holt. And that's going to be it.
Good afternoon. My name is Sybil Suarez Holt, 404 Hudson Boulevard, and I'm here as a minority business owner. I am a black woman. I'm female. I am an emerging business. I am licensed. I am insured. But you know, they often say you get not because you ask not, but you ask not because you know not. I am registered with the state. I have sent in papers with the city. I have yet to be notified of anything that the city offered. I am registered as a vendor. I can supply goods and services, tissue paper, light bulbs, anything dealing with construction. I have never, and I've been here 3 years, I might add, and I have never received anything in that regards. I have to say something is broken in the program. And as I sat here and listened to the fact that you are 54% African American in this city, and we are comfortably saying less than 1%, arguably, you know, is what contracts are issued out to African Americans. If I would have reversed that issue and said this was a city of 54 to 60% Caucasian, and you got 1% of contracts, personal service, or anything else, no one can morally say that's right. And to argue that we're going to work towards 10% and we're going to study it some more is almost offensive, my friends. It's almost offensive. I would plead with you in the end of my 10 seconds that we not study, but we can create a plan of action. It's easy to find out who's an emerging business. They're all registered with the state. It's easy to find out how much money they're making. They all have occupational license. It's a matter of cross-checking. It's a simple process. It doesn't take years, months, or even weeks. I'm just saying, it's a process that can be done very easily, and in case you didn't know, I'm capable, I'm able, I'm financed, I'm qualified, and I'm ready to do work with the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hope. Thank you. No, Mayor.
We don't think that we're passing this off as something we're not serious about.
Okay.
And only take exception with what Ms. Holt said in that way. We think Ms. Holt is right in everything she said. The bottom line is, we paid a staffer a salary to bring that information, and we're having to create it now because it was never complete. That's the bottom line, gentlemen. That's the bottom line.
Thank you, Mayor. On item 2 and 3, we're going to pass. We're going to bring this item back on the agenda February 10th. Administration, please
Chair.
be prepared for February 10th.
What's coming back on the 10th?
Yes, we're going to deal with 8 feet and item number 2, another business. Because of time, I'm going to, is there any other business coming for cost share agreement? I'm going to adjourn the meeting at this time and start the regular meeting. Thank you.